The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with barely contained laughter. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of advanced civilizations sat in their hovering pods, arranged in concentric circles that rose toward the crystal dome ceiling. Their amusement echoed off the ancient walls, built by races so old that some had already turned to stardust. Dr. Marcus Gray stood at the center of it all, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue light of his holographic display. At 60 years old, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes, he had faced many challenges in his scientific career, but nothing had prepared him for this level of ridicule. "You expect us to believe," spoke High Counselor Rex, his massive form towering in his pod, skin shifting colors like an angry sunset, that your species, barely 1,000 years into space travel, has achieved what we couldn't in 50,000 years. More laughter rolled through the chamber. Some of the younger races, trying to curry favor with the ancient civilizations, laughed the loudest. Marcus took a deep breath. Behind him, Admiral Jane Stone stood at parade rest, her military uniform crisp and perfect, her face a mask of professional calm. But Marcus could see the slight twitch in her jaw. She was angry. "The mathematics are sound," Marcus said, his voice steady. He gestured at the complex equations floating in the air. "Our understanding of dimensional physics has led to a breakthrough. The infinity drive works. We've tested it." A representative from the Silicon consciousness, their crystalline form glittering, spoke next. "Tested? In simulations, perhaps. Like children playing with toy ships." Their voice carried the artificial perfection of a machine race that had transcended organic limits thousands of years ago. Marcus pressed a button on his tablet. The hologram changed, showing a massive ship unlike anything the Council had seen before. Its hull seemed to shift and change, as if the metal itself couldn't decide which dimension it wanted to exist in. "The ESS paradox is real," Marcus said. "It's not a simulation. We've built it, and it works." High Counselor Rex leaned forward, his pod humming as it adjusted to his movement. "Impossible. The energy requirements alone would tear your primitive ship apart. Your species can barely harness the power of your own sun." Admiral Stone stepped forward. The Council's guards tensed, their weapons humming to life, but she ignored them. "We came here as a courtesy," she said, her voice carrying authority that made even some of the older races pause. "Earth wanted to inform the Council of our achievement before we began regular operations." "Operations?" Rex's skin turned a deep purple. "You will not conduct any operations with untested technology. The Council forbids it." Now it was Marcus's turn to smile. "With all due respect, High Counselor, we didn't come to ask for permission. We came to notify you. As per Galactic Law, Section 7, Paragraph 12, all significant technological advancements that may affect interspecies travel must be reported to the Council." The laughter had died down now, replaced by murmurs. The humans' confidence was unsettling. "You dare quote law to us?" Rex thundered. "Your species still fights wars over primitive resources. You build weapons that could destroy your own world. You are children playing with forces beyond your comprehension." Marcus packed up his tablet, nodding to Admiral Stone. "History shows that those who laugh at human determination often find themselves surprised by the results." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and High Counselor, that war you mentioned, we stopped fighting it the day we realized we could access the 7th dimension. There are bigger things to focus on now." As they walked out of the Great Hall, the laughter started again, but it was different now. Uncertain, forced. Some representatives were already calling for private meetings with their governments. In the corridor outside, Admiral Stone finally allowed herself a small smile. "They bought it," she whispered. "They think we're bluffing," Marcus replied, his eyes twinkling. "That's exactly what we wanted. When the Dominion makes their move, the ESS paradox will be ready," Stone finished, "and no one will be laughing then." They walked toward their ship, leaving behind a council that, despite all their advanced technology and wisdom, had just made humanity's oldest mistake. They had underestimated their lessers. In 3 days, they would learn just how costly that mistake would be. Deep within Earth's most secure shipyard, hidden beneath the ice sheets of Antarctica, the ESS Paradox floated in its holding chamber. The ship defied conventional description. Its hull seemed to ripple like water, despite being made of the strongest metals humanity had ever created. At times, parts of it appeared to vanish, only to reappear seconds later, as if testing which dimension it preferred to exist in. Captain Robert Wells stood at the observation deck, his hands clasped behind his back. 20 years in Earth's Space Force hadn't prepared him for this moment. No one could have prepared for this. Beautiful, isn't she? Dr. Marcus Gray walked up beside him, fresh from his return from the Galactic Council. And they think it's just a fancy light show. How long until they realize it's not? Robert asked, watching as maintenance drones swarmed around the ship like glowing fireflies. They won't. Not until it's too late. Marcus pointed to a section of the hull where the metal seemed to fold in on itself. See that? The quantum crystalline structure is already adapting. The ship is learning. Below them, crews worked tirelessly, loading supplies and running final checks. The ship's crew of 50 had been chosen from millions of candidates. Each one had undergone extensive genetic modification to handle the stress of seventh-dimensional travel. Their minds had been enhanced with quantum processors that would help them understand what they were seeing when the ship activated its full capabilities. "Show me the core," Robert said. Marcus led him to a secure elevator. As they descended, holograms appeared around them, showing the ship's internal systems. At its heart lay something that looked like a small star caught in a web of crystal. "The Infinity Drive," Marcus explained. "It doesn't just break through dimensions. It exists in all of them simultaneously. When activated, it will allow the paradox to do the same." They stepped out into the engineering level. Chief Engineer Lisa Park greeted them, her quantum processor implant glowing softly behind her left ear. "We're at 97% efficiency," she reported. "The crystal matrix is stable, and the dimensional anchors are holding." "And the weapon systems?" Robert asked. Lisa smiled. "Ready, though I'm not sure weapons is the right word for what this ship can do." They walked through the engine room, where massive crystals pulsed with energy that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Regular engineers wore special goggles to avoid going mad from looking directly at the technology they were maintaining. "The Council thinks we're bluffing," Marcus said, running his hand along a crystal. "They believe we're too primitive to handle this power. But humanity has always been good at one thing: adapting." Robert nodded. "How long until the Dominion attacks?" "Intelligence suggests 3 days. They've been massing their fleet at the edge of our territory. Traditional sensors can't detect them, but—" Marcus tapped his tablet, showing a bizarre readout that looked like a mathematical equation come to life. "When you can see in 7 dimensions, hiding becomes much harder." The ship's internal communication system crackled to life. "Captain to the bridge. Final systems check in 10 minutes." Robert turned to leave, then paused. "Doctor, there's something you haven't told the crew, isn't there? About what the ship really is." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "The paradox isn't just a ship, Captain. When it activates fully, it's going to change everything we understand about reality. The crew's modifications aren't just to help them survive the travel. They're to help them survive what they're going to become." "And what's that?" "Gods," Marcus whispered, "or the closest thing to them this galaxy has ever seen." As they rode back up to the bridge, Robert thought about his crew. None of them knew they were about to transcend what it meant to be human. But first, they had to survive the coming battle. A battle that would either establish humanity as a force to be reckoned with or end their species entirely. The paradox hummed beneath them, its hull shifting between dimensions, ready for its maiden voyage. In 3 days, the galaxy would learn why you should never underestimate humans, especially humans with something to prove. The attack came sooner than expected. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry wasps, their ships black against the stars. They struck 3 human colonies simultaneously: Mars, Europa, and New Terra. Their weapons turned the night into day, their energy beams cutting through planetary defenses like paper. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Stone watched the horror unfold on massive screens. Red dots representing human ships winked out one by one as they faced the overwhelming force. Mars colony has lost their outer defense ring, an operator announced, his voice shaking. Europa's shield generators are at 12% and falling. New Terra, he paused, swallowing hard. New Terra has gone dark. Stone's fingers dug into the command console. Where is the Galactic Council? Have they responded to our distress calls? A communications officer looked up, her face pale. They say this is a natural consequence of our species' arrogance. They're calling it natural selection and refuse to intervene. The room fell silent except for the constant beeping of alert signals. On the main screen, a message flashed from Mars colony. Cannot hold. Requesting immediate evacuation. Millions of civilians at risk. Stone straightened her uniform and pressed a button on her console. Get me Dr. Gray. Now. Moments later, Marcus Gray's face appeared on a side screen. Behind him, the ESS Paradox floated in its chamber, its hull rippling more violently than ever. You see what's happening? Stone asked. Marcus nodded. The Paradox is ready. Captain Wells and his crew are aboard. But Jane, he leaned closer to the screen. Once we activate the full systems, there's no going back. The ship will change them. We don't have a choice anymore. Stone's voice was hard. The Dominion isn't just attacking us. They're trying to wipe us out. Show them why that's a mistake. Marcus turned to someone off-screen and nodded. Initiating Paradox Protocol. God help us all. In the Antarctic shipyard, the ESS Paradox's hull began to glow. The quantum crystalline structure throughout the ship pulsed with energy that defied physical laws. On the bridge, Captain Wells sat in his command chair, feeling the ship's power flow through his enhanced body. All hands, he announced, his voice steady despite the fear and excitement coursing through him. Prepare for dimensional shift. Remember your training. What you're about to experience. There are no words for it. Trust in yourselves. Trust in each other. Chief Engineer Lisa Park's voice came over the comm. Infinity drive at full power. Dimensional anchors disengaging. Captain, I can feel it. The ship is calling to us. Let it in, Wells commanded. Everyone, let it in. 50 crew members, scattered throughout the ship, closed their eyes. Their quantum processors lit up like stars as the ship's consciousness merged with theirs. They felt their awareness expand, pushing through dimensional barriers that had confined humanity for millennia. In the command center, Stone and her staff watched in awe as the Paradox lifted off. The ship seemed to stretch, its form becoming impossible to track with normal vision. Then, with a flash that registered across all known spectrums, it vanished. Where did they go? Someone whispered. Stone smiled grimly. Everywhere. At Mars colony, the Dominion fleet was pressing their advantage, their weapons reducing human defenses to slag. Their commanders were so focused on their victory that they didn't immediately notice when their ships started passing through each other, their carefully coordinated formation falling into chaos. In high orbit above Europa, Dominion gunners found their weapons passing harmlessly through their targets, while human refugee ships slipped away through gaps in space that shouldn't exist. And at New Terra, the ESS Paradox appeared, or rather, 12 versions of it appeared simultaneously, surrounding the Dominion flagship. Each version existed in a different dimension, but all were equally real, equally powerful, and equally angry. Captain Wells's voice, somehow broadcasting on all frequencies in all languages, echoed across space. You should have listened when we tried to warn you. Now let us show you what humanity can really do. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. And this time, no one was laughing. The Dominion flagship's bridge fell silent as they watched their weapons pass harmlessly through the human vessel. The ship's commander, a being of pure energy contained within an armored shell, dimmed with confusion. Their most powerful weapons, capable of cracking planets, were having no effect. "Impossible," the commander whispered. "Scan that ship again." His science officer's voice trembled. "Sir, we can't. The scanners show it existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It's everywhere and nowhere. Our systems can't process what they're seeing." Aboard the ESS Paradox, Captain Wells and his crew experienced reality in ways no human ever had before. Through their enhanced minds, merged with the ship's quantum consciousness, they saw the universe in 7 dimensions. Time flowed like a river before them. Space bent like cloth in a wind, and the barriers between dimensions were as thin as paper. "Engineering, report," Wells commanded, his voice echoing across multiple versions of the ship. Lisa Park's response came from what seemed like 1,000 directions at once. "The Infinity Drive is stable, Captain. The crew is fully synchronized with the ship's systems. We are operating at—" "Well, sir, our efficiency ratings don't have numbers for this anymore." Wells nodded, watching as his tactical display showed him not just where things were, but where they had been and where they might be. The Dominion fleet appeared as translucent trails through time and space, their movements predictable, their strategies transparent. "Show them," he ordered. The Paradox began to move. To the Dominion fleet, it seemed as if reality itself was breaking. The human ship appeared to fold through space, each movement leaving afterimages that were somehow solid and real. It passed through their ships as if they weren't there, emerging behind them, beside them, above them, all at once. In the Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Stone and Dr. Gray watched the sensor feeds with a mixture of awe and terror. "What are we seeing, Marcus?" Stone whispered. "The end of 3-dimensional warfare," Gray replied. "The Paradox isn't just moving through space, it's moving through dimensions. Each version you see is real, existing in a different dimensional plane. They can't hit us because we're literally not there when their weapons fire." On the main screen, they watched as the Paradox demonstrated its true power. The ship split into multiple versions, each one existing in a different dimension, but acting in perfect coordination. Around Mars, Europa, and New Terra, the Dominion fleet found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't hit, couldn't track, and couldn't understand. The crew of the Paradox felt their consciousness expand further. Through their neural links, they could see the quantum structure of reality itself. Time became another dimension to move through, as solid as length or width. They saw the fear building in the Dominion fleet, saw the confusion in their command structure, saw the moment their confidence shattered. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, her voice resonating across dimensions, "the Dominion ships are attempting to retreat. Their dimensional signatures suggest they're charging their jump drives." Wells leaned forward in his command chair. "Not yet. Show them one more thing." The Paradox ceased its multiple manifestations, consolidating into a single form. For a moment, it appeared normal, almost vulnerable. The Dominion ships turned their weapons toward it, hoping to strike before it could split again. Then the ship did something that would be talked about in hushed whispers across the galaxy for centuries to come. It shifted not just its location, but its temporal position. To the watching fleets, the Paradox appeared to age 1,000 years and reverse to its construction in the same moment. It existed at every point in its own timeline simultaneously, creating a cascade of temporal energy that made the laws of physics scream in protest. The Dominion fleet's weapons, when they fired, struck the ship at every point in its existence at once, and found that a ship that existed at all points in time could not be destroyed at any of them. In the command center, Gray smiled. "Now they understand," he said softly. "The Paradox isn't just a ship. It's human ingenuity freed from the constraints of conventional reality." The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the technology they created. It was their ability to reimagine what was possible. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council, which had echoed with laughter just days ago, now sat in stunned silence. Emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy played on floating screens, showing the same impossible scenes. A single human ship defeating the most powerful fleet in known space. High Counselor Rex's skin had turned a pale, sickly color as he watched the recordings for the 100th time. The ESS paradox moved through dimensions like a fish through water, existing everywhere and nowhere, untouchable yet devastating in its power. They weren't bluffing, whispered the representative from the Silicon Consciousness, their crystalline form dulled with fear. They actually did it. They mastered seventh-dimensional travel. The door to the council chamber slammed open. Admiral Stone strode in, followed by Dr. Gray. This time, there were no guards rushing to stop them, no weapons powering up. Instead, the council members drew back in their pods, trying to put distance between themselves and the humans. 3 days ago, Stone's voice carried across the chamber. You laughed at us, called us primitive, refused to help when we were attacked. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today, we'd like to discuss new terms for humanity's position in the galactic community. Rex's pod drifted forward. You don't understand what you've done. The power you're wielding could tear reality apart. Gray stepped forward, holding up his tablet. Actually, we understand it perfectly. Would you like to see the mathematical proofs again? The ones you laughed at. His smile was cold. This time, I'll explain them slowly. On the screens above, new footage began playing. The Dominion fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, was retreating in chaos. Their ships, worth the GDP of entire star systems, abandoned across 3 star systems. The ESS paradox had defeated them without destroying a single vessel. It had simply made their weapons useless, their defenses meaningless, their power irrelevant. The balance of power, the Silicon Consciousness representative said. It's shifted completely. No, Stone corrected them. It's not about power. It's about understanding. Humanity didn't just build a better weapon. We found a better way to see reality itself. She turned to address the entire council. And we did it while you were laughing at us. Gray pulled up a new hologram, showing the ESS paradox's specifications. Our ship doesn't just travel through dimensions. It exists in them. Every dimension is a tool, every physical law a suggestion. We've rewritten the rules of what's possible. The council chamber erupted in worried whispers. Some representatives were already sending urgent messages to their homeworlds. Others sat frozen, realizing the full implications of what humanity had achieved. What are your demands? Rex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Stone's laugh echoed through the chamber, not mocking, but genuinely amused. Demands. We're not here to make demands. We're here to offer help. The silence that followed was deafening. Help? Someone asked. Yes, Gray said. The paradox proved something we've long suspected. The universe is far more complex and beautiful than anyone imagined. We've learned to see it in new ways, to understand it better, and we're willing to share that understanding. But Stone added, her voice hardening slightly. First, we need guarantees. No more dismissing species as primitive. No more standing by while stronger powers attack the weak. No more treating technological advancement as a weapon to hold over others. Rex's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a deep blue, the color of acceptance in his species. And if we refuse? In answer, a new image appeared above them. The ESS paradox, floating in space, its hull rippling with dimensional energy. But behind it, barely visible, were the shapes of more ships under construction. Then, Gray said softly, you'll have to explain to your people why you chose pride over progress. Again. The council chamber fell silent once more. But this time, it wasn't the silence of shock or fear. It was the silence of a galaxy realizing that everything was about to change. And somewhere in that silence was the echo of laughter, not mocking this time, but the quiet chuckle of human ingenuity proving itself once again. The Dominion's Supreme Commander was not ready to accept defeat. While the Galactic Council debated humanity's new role, he gathered his remaining forces for one final, desperate attack. 3,000 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy's history, prepared to strike Earth itself. "If we can't defeat one ship," he told his officers, "we'll overwhelm it with numbers." But aboard the ESS Paradox, Captain Wells and his crew watched the fleet's gathering with something approaching pity. Through their enhanced senses and connection to the ship's quantum consciousness, they saw the Dominion's movements across all 7 dimensions simultaneously. "They still don't understand," Lisa Park said from engineering, her voice echoing across multiple dimensional planes. "They're thinking in terms of numbers and firepower." Wells nodded, watching the enemy fleet's temporal signatures stretch out before him like ribbons in the wind. Sometimes the hardest lesson is learning that everything you thought you knew was wrong. The Dominion fleet jumped into Earth's solar system all at once, their weapons charged, their shields at maximum. They expected to find the paradox waiting for them. Instead, they found empty space. "Where are they?" the Supreme Commander demanded. "Find that ship." His sensor operators frantically scanned every frequency, every spectrum, every dimension they could detect. But the paradox was operating on levels they couldn't even perceive. Wells's voice suddenly echoed through every ship in the Dominion fleet, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We tried to show you mercy. We tried to prove our point without destruction. But you forced our hand." The paradox appeared, not in one place, but in the space between dimensions. To the Dominion fleet, it looked like reality itself was tearing open. The human ship existed in all 7 dimensions at once, each version of it fully real, fully powered, and fully armed. "Watch carefully," Wells announced to his crew. "What we do here today will be remembered for centuries." The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration of power so far beyond conventional warfare that many who witnessed it couldn't find words to describe it. The paradox moved through the Dominion fleet like a ghost through walls. But instead of passing harmlessly through, it rewrote the laws of physics around each ship it touched. Time dilated, space curved, dimensions folded. Some Dominion ships found themselves aging 1,000 years in an instant, their hulls crumbling to dust. Others were shifted slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, their crews watching helplessly as their weapons passed through targets that existed a microsecond ahead or behind them in time. In engineering, Lisa Park monitored the Infinity Drive as it performed feats that should have been impossible. "Captain, we're rewriting the fundamental forces of the universe around their ships. Their technology literally cannot function in the new physics we're creating." The Supreme Commander watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by a single vessel. Ships that had survived 100 battles were rendered useless, not by weapons, but by their own universe turning against them. "Impossible," he whispered, watching his flagship's systems fail one by one. "What are they?" The answer came as the paradox appeared directly in front of his bridge, its hull rippling with dimensional energy. Through the view screen, he could see Captain Wells standing on his bridge, but the human seemed to exist in multiple times and places simultaneously. "We are what happens," Wells said, his voice resonating across dimensions, "when you push humanity to its limits, when you force us to look beyond what we thought was possible. We didn't build a better ship, we rebuilt reality itself." The battle ended not with explosions or destruction, but with silence. 3,000 of the most powerful ships ever built hung motionless in space, their systems corrupted by physics they couldn't comprehend, their crews humbled by power they couldn't fight. In Earth's Defense Command Center, Admiral Stone watched the sensor readings with a mix of awe and relief. "Send the message," she ordered. Across every communication channel in the galaxy, in every language known to sentient life, a simple message began to play. "The battle is over. The universe is bigger than you imagined. Let us show you how to see it. And in the space between dimensions, the ESS paradox continued its patrol, a reminder that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy. It's the ability to change the rules completely. 1 month after the battle that changed everything, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The ancient circular pods had been replaced with a simple round table. Representatives from all species, including the humble Dominion, sat as equals. At the center of the table, a hologram of the ESS paradox rotated slowly, a reminder of how quickly the universe could change. Dr. Marcus Gray stood before them, but this time there was no laughter. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the room was fixed on him with intense focus. The principles of seventh-dimensional physics are actually quite simple, he explained, drawing equations in the air with casual waves of his hand. The problem was never the math. It was our perspective. We were trying to understand higher dimensions while thinking in lower ones. In the back of the chamber, Admiral Stone watched with quiet satisfaction. Beside her stood Captain Wells, his quantum processor implant glowing softly as he experienced the room in all 7 dimensions simultaneously. The technology will be shared, Gray continued, but not all at once. Each species will need to develop their own understanding, their own path to dimensional awareness. We'll guide you, but you must make the journey yourselves. High Counselor Rex, his skin now permanently shifted to the blue of acceptance, leaned forward. And what of the other ships? The ones you're building. Gray smiled. The paradox was just the beginning. Each new ship teaches us more about the nature of reality itself. But more importantly, each one shows us new ways to cooperate, to explore, to grow. The chamber's screens lit up with images from across the galaxy. The Dominion fleet, now restored to normal spacetime, working alongside human scientists to understand dimensional physics. Former enemy species collaborating on new technologies. The barriers between civilizations breaking down as they all reached for a greater understanding of the universe. 1 month ago, Stone addressed the Council. You laughed at us, called us primitive. But humanity's greatest strength was never our technology. It was our ability to imagine something better, to see possibilities where others saw limits. The former Supreme Commander of the Dominion Fleet, now serving as their diplomatic representative, stood up. We were wrong, he admitted, his voice carrying across the chamber. We thought power came from weapons, from the ability to destroy. You showed us that true power comes from understanding. Wells stepped forward, his enhanced perception allowing him to see the quantum threads of possibility stretching out from this moment. The ESS paradox was named to remind us that the universe is full of contradictions, that the impossible becomes possible when you look at it from a new angle. Gray brought up one final hologram, a map of the known galaxy, but seen through 7-dimensional space. It was beautiful and complex, showing connections and patterns that no one had ever seen before. This is what we see now, he explained. Every star, every planet, every species connected in ways we never imagined. The universe isn't just bigger than we thought. It's more intricate, more alive. The council members stared in wonder at the display. Many were already planning expeditions, research projects, and collaborative ventures that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. And the laughter. Someone asked, what of those who mocked humanity? Stone's answer was simple. We teach them to laugh with us, not at us, to find joy in discovery rather than derision and indifference. As the council session ended, representatives from 100 species filed out, talking excitedly about the future. The age of division was over. The age of understanding had begun. In orbit above Earth, the ESS paradox continued its patrol, its hull shifting through dimensions like silk in the wind. But now it wasn't alone. Other ships were starting to rise from shipyards across the galaxy, each one a testament to what could be achieved when species work together instead of against each other. And somewhere, in the quantum fabric of spacetime, the echo of mocking laughter had been replaced by something new. the sound of a galaxy learning to see with new eyes, to think with new minds, and to dream with new hope. The universe, they had learned, was not just stranger than they imagined. It was stranger than they could have imagined. But with humanity's help, they were finally ready to understand it.